Continued from the Sarge's Tale playlist. The day had started off well enough for Hawn. It began with calling Lefty into his workshop. Hawn handed over a massive firearm to the Dragwa legend when he arrived. A single-shot pistol of truly excessive size, firing a 4-inch diameter, 9-inch long round that could be configured for a vast array of uses, fired from a 4-foot long barrel. The orewood stock and grip were lovingly shaped and molded specifically for Lefty. The uni-star metal alloy of the barrel covered in small runes and glyphs, matching those found on the orewood furniture. It was not a weapon meant for use against any but the greatest of foes, ones beyond the attacks of a sane or rational scale. It fired what could easily be called artillery rounds, with recoil alone being too much for all but a select few to survive, much less handle and use in combat. Even with all the magic and craftsmanship, the materials and mitigating design elements poured into its construction, it was a weapon that Lefty knew would require long hours to learn, and perhaps even years to master. Perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and new guests of the library, I am the recorder, and before we continue with today's tale, allow me to ask you to like, share, and ensure you are subscribed to Griffin's Library so you can always have ready access to entries as they release. If you wish to further support the Realms and the library, join us at griffin'slibrary.locals.com for early access to entries days before the regular release, as well as content you will find nowhere else. Other means of support are detailed in the channel's description page. Thank you for your consideration and support of the Realms, no matter what form it might take. Now, on to our tale. Looking over the pistol, its ammunition, along with the ammo pouch and holster made of ore weave, Lefty listened intently as Hawn described how the weapon's various features could be used, and only asked the pressing question on his mind after the Christon had concluded. Even as a Dragwa of the Supremacist line, this weapon was still oversized and massive beyond Lefty's ability to wield effectively. Unless Hawn knew exactly who and what Lefty was. There were only a few Dragwa that had ever lived who would be of a stature to match this gun's scale, and Hawn had somehow identified that Lefty was one of them, in spite of the fact that he was perhaps one of the last of his kind, a progenitor Dragwa, the first successful products of the Dragwa project. There were only ever a few dozen progenitors made, as the IttR decided quickly that they would be just as well served with smaller, less powerful, and easier to control versions of these warriors that they were crafting. Most had died long before the end of the IttR's time in the home city, in testing or by other means. Lefty had not thought of his status as one in ages. He was now finding it hard to think of anything else. Of all the... How could you possibly know? Lefty's face was filled with confusion and shock. Well, your reaction to my rotator pistol was the first clue. Only someone who had seen the true aftermath of them would have such a powerful reaction. That makes you old, very old. Along with the dialect of Dragwa you babble in your sleep, not having been in use for thousands of years. And then never by any but the progenitors, or the historians of the home city looking over the earliest of Dragwall writings. And the historians are new in comparison. The rest was a simple process of elimination. There were only a few progenitors left by the time that the NLR were removed from the home city. Of them, only 2 were pistoliers. The others were far more favoring a melee. Clever. Memory isn't bad either. It was hard to tell if he was more annoyed or impressed. However, like a great balloon, Lefty grew to his full 12-foot size for the first time in an untold number of years. Examining the weapon now and how it was fitted and balanced for him in his natural frame, he could not help but smile as Hawn continued. The last clue is what you are, celestial touched. It was the thud of 6 seconds that did it, wasn't it? That is the exposure of power and energies that turned you into a Quarian. And that's why you were gone from the home city after it happened. For a long moment, the memories of times long past played across Lefty's face, before his focus returned to the present. Yes, by the time I had recovered and understood what I had become and what had precipitated it, I was already in the city on the edge of time. The celestial elemental forces had been curtailed fully by the great work, which hampered my return to Jam'mar for quite some time. Combined with the suppression of the supremist gene line, and it was not till just before the rain before I could return, and then only as a fleetfoot or sky dancer after a reformation. Lefty's voice was filled with the haze of memory as he fastened the holster and weapon, along with the 4-round pouch, in amongst his collection of other pistols that he carried. Afterwards, he shrank back down, smiling as his new weapon resized itself accordingly in its holster. However, the strap securing the weapon knotted itself to prevent the weapon from being drawn at this size, causing Lefty to grimace at the implication. So, this stays between us. Lefty was looking at Hawn. What? I wasn't supposed to make it a full bulletin? Wonder if Navi can cancel it. Hawn smiled widely as Lefty moved to leave, shaking his head, having just received a request for his presence. He was smiling too, but Hawn couldn't tell if it was his humor or long-buried memories that was the cause. Soon after, Hawn was called to his office to receive a priority communique from none other than the captain of the Expeditus Primus, Killian Skychild. Hawn may have encountered and worked along the Skychilds in his past, having served under Killian's father, Verisar, for centuries, after working with Carthus Skychild, his grandfather, in the early years of Criterion's founding and growth. But he never got used to the manner and means in which they chose to operate, and would have to often remind himself that they were in fact gods, and not just extremely powerful, ageless mortals with untold ambition and drive. As he moved to sit behind his desk covered in various blueprints, production reports, and shipping contracts, Hawn poured himself a stiff drink. He had a feeling he was going to need it. What business would justify such a personage contacting him personally? Sitting in his chair, he reached over and pressed the blinking gemstone to activate the communication system. With a shimmer of magic and holo projectors, the image of Killian Skychild manifested across the desk from him, sitting behind a desk not unlike Hawn's, if a bit more buried in paperwork. Killian nodded solemnly, holding and sipping from a drink of his own, mirroring Hawn's own position and seemingly mood. After the link was fully established, Killian set down his drink and began. Lord Hawn of Nomad's Forge, my apologies for bothering you like this. Formal greetings rarely boded well. I impose on your busy schedule as a necessary courtesy. You will receive a full report and file as soon as the Kaisa Council finishes processing the information we have just received. However, as there are factors that involve you and your holdings, combined with your status as a hand, I felt you should be informed. Lord Skychild, this is the first time I have had the pleasure to speak with you. However, I have spent enough time in the service of your father to know that despite the apparent or ready truth of your statements, you are dancing to something beyond what you are formally presenting. Save us both time, and let us speak frankly. Killian reached for his drink and took a slow pull from it, an action that Hawn mirrored perfectly, causing Killian's face to darken with a flash of annoyance. Gone almost as fast as it had appeared, realizing that his reaction was exactly what Hawn was going for. Smiling more broadly, Killian began to frankly speak. As you wish, Hawn. Better that way. Father told me you'd most likely be less than happy to hear from me. So, here are the brass tacks. The Ancient Empire's Cosmos Fleet, their equivalent to our Expedus Fleet, experienced a large-scale set of mutinies, with half opening fire on the rest in a coordinated strike. More than a third of their 36-ship fleet is now destroyed, with only the 9 original and largest ships remaining loyal and in the Ancient Empire's control. The attendant fleet elements are as of yet not fully accounted for, but they are expected to be in relatively the same condition as the vessel they were assigned to support. Hawn took a pull of his drink and emptied it, as he poured himself an even stiffer one to replace it, speaking as he did so. So how many vessels are now considered rogue? What are their disposition and assumed aims? This had to be a coalition of minor factions within the Empire, so I would assume we are not too worried about a large fleet forming, but a number of massive mobile strong points from which both the Empire, along with Kaiser's civil and wild realms, are going to be harassed. Hawn glanced at a particular project folder sitting on his desk and sighed. Once more, things moved in preparation for events now coming to pass, with him being just another piece on the board, playing his part. Another day in the life, he thought. We believe that as many as a dozen ships have escaped and have gone rogue. However, most should be damaged, some extensively. According to our Cosmos Fleet liaison, the battles lasted nearly a day and a half in most cases. Your assessment is correct. It seems that at worst there might be 1, perhaps 2 pairs of vessels working in concert, with the rest acting independent of each other. As for their aims, we have some broad strokes for most of the factions assumed to be in command of the vessels. However, that will be in the report you'll be getting from Kaisa. What you need to worry about is Vessel 6-3, designated the Reclaimer. Hawn felt the slightest of shivers run along his enhanced nerves, as he had an idea of what was about to be said. It is controlled by groups that were severely upset with Kaisa refusing to recognize the Empire's claim on Nomad's Forge, but approving your ownership. Their stated objective is the capture and return of your little station and system to the Empire. Unlike many of the mutineers, however, they only participated in the initial onslaught of the betrayal, extricating themselves as soon as it was possible. As such, you'd be wise to assume that they are at or above optimal readiness. The Reclaimer. Hawn took a slow breath. I have a hostile, 5,500-mile long, Expeditus-class warship inbound, intent on seizing Nomad's Forge and returning it to the Empire as a, what exactly? A get-out-of-execution for mutiny card? Killian chuckled at the quip, as Hawn was absolutely right. The Empire wouldn't be able to let any of them live, even if they returned after such a betrayal, forge in hand or not. Regardless of all that, may I ask what the fleet and the council are doing about this? And how long do we have till contact? Killian took another long drink, seeming to steel himself, before looking directly at Hawn. Nomad's Forge is a independent, wild realm. You are on your own. Kaisa cannot risk sending any support from the civil realms and systems that is just as likely to become a target from any of the other rogue vessels. Wait. Are you saying that Nomad's Forge will not be receiving any support from either the Council or the fleet? Hawn was hoping he had missed something, that this was a jest. There were over 1.5 million people on this massive station permanently, with twice that in temporary residence at any time. That is correct. Hand of Destiny or not, we can't afford to risk any of the Expeditus fleet, even over a resource like Nomad's Forge. Killian looked over to his side, nodding, before he continued. The Expeditus fleet and its defensive forces are to be continuing with our operations as normal until a opportune situation presents itself for other action. Reality is, as of now, the men and women on those Cosmos vessels have more real combat experience in this scale than we do, and we can't afford to see any of our fleet lost or maimed, even if 2 more ships will be joining the fleet soon. Hawn was speechless. You have at most a month by our calculations, and there is reason to believe that they will have a large and significant fleet element as well. I am sorry, Lord Hawn of Nomad's Forge, but this is your problem to handle. The captains have voted, and we will not be revisiting this topic. Expeditus fleet out. With a soft pop and a fizz, the image began to vanish, leaving Hawn to his thoughts in slowly rising annoyance. With a rapid set of motions across the controls, he re-established the link, much to the confusion of Killian, who was caught mid-motion rising from his chair. Before you wander off and leave me to my own devices and destiny, I would like all of your records and reports on all pirate and raider activity from around the cluster for the last 300 years, as well as the EDF and whatever else you can check, particularly the Pathfinder Core. If you can arrange for the same data from the Empire's records as well, that would be excellent. Killian's confusion only grew as Hawn continued. Please note as well that all of Nomad Forge's taxes, fees, tariffs, and other costs for any Kaisa Guardian ships, Expeditus fleet, as well as EDF, including all support vessels and their crew, have just grown by an order of magnitude in perpetuity. I have to make up for the upcoming losses somewhere, and hedge against future events of this nature, of course. Nothing personal. Killian's confusion was replaced by disbelief and anger as Hawn continued. If, however, you get me this information promptly, I can perhaps see about it only being a 4 or 5-fold increase, and perhaps only for millennia 3. As a courtesy, of course. Nomad's Forge, out. Hawn cut and scrambled the link in such a way that Killian could not respond. Whether Killian got the intel or not mattered little in the immediate situation, as the information would only be of use if they could deal with the impending threat. But being able to leverage a Skychild into getting it for him would be a nice bonus, as it inevitably meant that he would get the intel vetted by Verisar's Skychild, and that would be as near as can be to perfect in its accuracy. Before he could finish his thought, however, a blinking gem informed him that he had a request for an audience. Pressing the gem and sighing, the door to his office slid open and Lefty entered, accompanied by Ordis Skychild Alon, Criterion hero and inductee to the royal family, as well as the god of the Cognati. Hawn rose and greeted his guest, somewhat in shock by the timing. "Forgive me, sir. I was unaware that you were aboard. I would have welcomed you personally. Heroes of Criterion get the royal treatment here." "I won't hear of it, Lord Hawn. There's no need for such formality between fellow mechas. Now is there?" Ordis flowed out of his heavy armor suit as it backed itself into a corner. A silver and golden mass that took the form and solidified, with Ordis mid-step towards a chair, while Lefty was already at the bar, pouring refreshments for himself and Ordis. Hawn gestured for the guests to sit, and he took his own seat behind his desk. As Lefty handed Ordis his drink and sat down himself, the Analar began to speak. "Hawn, I have come to let you know that we are aware of the situation you now find yourself in, and we aim to do something about it." "Pray tell who is, we in this case, Sir Ordis?" "The gods, as well as others of relevance. We gods cannot directly interfere in this battle, not with things as they currently are." He held up a hand to halt Hawn's expected outburst. "But that does not mean there are those who can act that aren't willing to. In fact, there are those that are more than willing to move in support of your defense. You have a powerful advocate in the form of the Omnimind, for example." Hawn's world stuttered and swam for long moments at the comment, his mind placing pieces together. Of course the Omnimind knew what was going on, and it approved of him being chosen as a hand of destiny. How else did they get that fiddle box, if not with the Omnimind's assent? It should have been obvious to him. Ordis had a knowing smile on his face as Hawn set the implications aside for the moment to return to the topic at hand. Rumor was that Ordis had his own range of interactions with the Omnimind, and like Hawn, was far more familiar with it than your average citizen or even many of the government might have been. "Details are still being worked out, but you should be receiving some fleet elements beginning by the end of the week, with additional forces and assets set to arrive as they are made available, over about the next 2 weeks. We can't promise anything close to the forces you need to reliably destroy or threaten a ship of that size, but we intend to make Nomad Forge far too tough a nut to be able to crack." The Forge itself can deal the needed damage. However, they'd have to be foolish enough to get close enough with their Cosmos vessel. The point defense and weapon systems of the station are far more than enough to keep anything smaller from being able to attack without tremendous loss, even to large fleet formations. But you see, these rogue Cosmos ships are patterned off the Expeditus Draxus, with many of the weapon systems included. and therefore stands a reasonable chance of being able to stay out of range while providing enough support for other attacking elements to become a threat. Hawn took a drink as he continued. Whatever forces you can marshal I appreciate beyond measure, so long as they can follow orders. I can't be having hotshots flying around and fouling the target locks of the station and other ships trying to steal their kills, targets, and glory. That's my job. Ordis and Lefty both chuckled at the joke, with Ordis confirming that any ships coming to Hawn's aid would be capable of following Nomad Forge's orders and directives. This would mean we're looking at a siege scenario. Nomad's Forge is fully self-sufficient, right? How long can we hold out for a relief force against sustained attack? Lefty was asking as Ordis stared intently at Hawn. Hawn was guessing that Ordis spent way too much time in his suit, with such obvious actions being concealed behind an impenetrable faceplate. We can hold out indefinitely as far as supplies and such. The only thing limiting our ability to effectively resist being boarded or taken over would be attrition of manpower. We can build or rebuild damn near anything here, so ships, fighters, and weapons aren't the problem. But crew? That could be worn down quickly if we are not careful, or if the foe gets lucky. Ordis seemed to consider this, and smiled before speaking. A fair concern. However, I believe we can have more than enough crew and personnel if we also have the oncoming fleet elements arrive with additional crews waiting on ships that you will be constructing. I am sure you are able to begin building ships even now, if you haven't already started. Offer ships for service, and I'd wager you double the potential size of this defense fleet, with the proportional amount of additional personnel that would no doubt follow in their wake. You should be able to replace any losses for some time. If you are sanguine with the idea, I'll begin to reach out and screen potentials for it. I'll have to run some numbers and talk to my people, but provisionally vet a few crews across various classes of ship. So, Ordis Skychild alone, what's he ask for all this assistance? Ordis drained his glass, set it down, and flowed back into his armor before tossing an item onto Hawn's desk. By the time the object bounced and rolled into Hawn's hands, Ordis was holding his mountain sledge, and answered as Lefty looked between the two, suddenly confused, as if this was not what he was expecting. Dwarf, gas lower, and I'll be taking immediate custody of them, regardless of whether you accept our help or not. I'm sorry, Hawn, but this is not an ask. To be continued. Perceptive patrons, regular visitors, and new guests to the library. I have been, as always, the recorder, and I want to thank you for your time, your interest, and your support of Griffin's Library and the Realms of Jam'mar. Now, until you make your way back to the library for another entry of Intro to the Realms, by the 9 and 4, be well, take care of yourselves, and each other. If you'd like to contribute to the further exploration and explanation of the realms, please consider leaving a comment, a like, and sharing the video around. I read all the comments and make efforts to reply to each. Thank you for helping to grow the channel, and know I look forward to each and every one of your comments. Other methods of support can be found in the channel's description. Thank you for watching,